The stories don't stop when the cameras go away. There's always a next chapter.
The award-winning show APTN Investigates has been around for 13 seasons.
A lot has happened since that documentary has aired.
We just laid it out line by line.
You stayed in contact with this family. That's like a decade ago, right? Yeah. How is Maddie doing? How old is he now? How's his family doing? Did they get help?
They are still battling.
We talked about many of those next chapters earlier this week on In Focus. And tonight we're here with two more.
It's Wednesday at the Kamsack Hospital, also known as Methadone Day. It's 9 a.m., and they're now serving patient number 90.
Melissa Ridgen returns with the next chapter on the methadone situation in Kamsack.
When you have a collection of 30,000 objects, it could take years and decades to research every single object. But we are committed because that's part of what we do as a museum, researching the history of each object.
And I'll be here at the Winnipeg Art Gallery with the latest on the Inuit carvings and their connection to tuberculosis hospitals.
J.D. Shingoose left drugs behind in Saskatoon to get back to his roots on the Cody First Nation.
Came out of it kind of a bad relationship that was, basically centered around drug abuse. And it just didn't work out too great. And I more or less got, the boot out of the picture because I didn't like doing the drugs, and I told her that. So she more or less chose the drugs over me, which kind of hurt me quite a bit.
He wanted simplicity, the comfort of family, and his culture. But something new awaited him back home.
And so when I came back here, I started just using like crazy. I was doing like 6 to 8 daily 4s a day.
What are those?
It's a little yellow pill.
He's talking about Dilaudid. It's one of many prescription drugs abused in the Kamsack area. The problem is hardly a well-kept secret. In a 2012 report to the Pharmacists Association of Saskatchewan, the Saskatoon Police Service identified Kamsack as one of the go-to places to get an easy opiate prescription. JD eventually decided to take back his life. But getting off opiates isn't easy. The physical and mental withdrawal is horrid. So he sought the help of a program designed to help opiate abusers kick the habit.
I've tried this before where I kind of set myself up to fail. So I wanted a better backup plan, something that, I thought was going to work.
Back in 2009, one of the town's longest-serving physicians, Dr. Murray Davies, started up a methadone program with the Sunrise Regional Health Authority. The Canadian Public Health Association says a well-run methadone program is a very safe and effective treatment for opiate addiction. JD says he showed up, filled out a form, gave a urine sample, and was a methadone patient.
He didn't seem too concerned about my overall health. So to say, he just came in there and made quick conversation, wrote the prescription, and was out.
APTN Investigates asked experts at a drug abuse conference in Winnipeg what they thought about methadone as a treatment for opiate addiction.
It requires a lot of background, the availability of resources, not just prescribing methadone, but all of the support services that should be associated with that. And of course, there's always the danger of someone overdosing, and methadone can kill you pretty easily.
JD says he didn't get that support.
He doesn't tell you to go to Narcotics Anonymous meetings or
No.
to see an addictions counselor?
Not even. And that's actually a good point.
Okay.
That it is really a good point that there's not really a system set up like a network.
Danny Sear is another methadone patient.
And you've been on the methadone program here in Kamsack?
Yes.
For how long?
4 years, since I was 16 years old. I was addicted to drugs, and I just didn't want to be waking up dope sick anymore. Wanted to go look for my next scheme so I can just not be sick, you know. I just wanted to feel normal in the morning, and so I just got sick of it, and I just heard there was a program to help us out.
Danny had been on methadone in Regina, but returned to Kamsack when the program started.
Did you notice any difference between the methadone clinic in Regina versus the methadone clinic here in Kamsack? The differences in treatment? And if so, what?
A big difference. He actually tried to help us, talk to us. He made a plan.
Danny is talking about the Regina methadone doctor.
He did the proper assessments, and he did the physical, and that's the stuff I didn't know about at first until I went seeing him. And, you know, the big difference.
In the quality of care.
Yeah. He doesn't just prescribe it just to anybody.
He feels Kamsack is a different story. It's Wednesday at the Kamsack Hospital, also known as Methadone Day. As you can see from this hidden camera footage, the waiting room is full, standing room only. It's 9 a.m., and they're now serving patient number 90. This woman gets you in to see the doctor. He'll give you a methadone prescription to help you get off opiates. Okay. You'll take the prescription to the pharmacy, and the pharmacist will mix methadone with juice crystals like Tang. You'll need to drink this every day. Jane comes here every Wednesday to get her methadone prescription. She doesn't want to be identified because of the stigma of her drug troubles.
How long had you been addicted to the prescription drugs?
About 2 years, year and a half.
Were you getting them from a doctor?
No, I was buying them on the street.
Jane was eventually able to join Dr. Davies' methadone program.
I straightened out for a while, but then eventually I went to something else.
If you're doing another drug while also on methadone, like, is that a concern to the doctor?
Well, the doctors, like, he threatened to cut me off a couple of times, but he hasn't brought me down or anything.
And he knows that you're addicted?
He knows that I'm addicted to other things.
But like clockwork, Jane comes to the Kamsack Hospital each week and gets another prescription, clean drug screen or not.
Like, I've been threatened more than twice to be taken off it, and he hasn't, like, lowered me or nothing. Like, he'll say, okay, next week if it's not clean, you're gonna be taken off it, and next week I'll see him, it's something different story. He'll prescribe the Ritalin with the methadone and also the benzodiazepines with the methadone. And from what, like, I know from when I was taking in Regina, you're not to be prescribed nothing with the methadone. Nothing else, like no benzodiazepines or no uppers or no downers.
Did you ask him about that? Like, how come you're prescribing me methadone and these?
Yeah, and well...
What was his explanation?
Well, for me, I was asking for them, and then, like wanting them. And then, other than that, like, he prescribed them to me, and then that's another thing is he'll prescribe it, then he would tell me, like, he'd want to cut me off because of it, but he doesn't.
Benzodiazepines are anti-anxiety drugs, generally not advised to be prescribed to those on methadone.
Do you feel that he's trying to, that he has your best health interest at heart?
No.
Do you like him as a doctor? Do you think he's doing...
No, I don't. He's, I don't know, he doesn't seem like he knows what he's doing or he has too much on his plate.
Notice the now serving sign in the waiting room on Methadone Day. It's no wonder JD began to feel like just a number. After 6 months, he wanted to be weaned off methadone, but felt his request was ignored.
It's probably like about 3 months of that before I finally, said, can you bring me down some? Like, he didn't even imply or, say that he wanted to bring me down or anything. He just kept, being smooth about it, being slick about it, the way he talked. Like, hey, how you doing? You staying out of trouble, this, that, the other. Like, just like making like conversation that just kind of throw you off what was really going on.
Dr. Davies initially agreed to an interview with APTN Investigates. However, days before we arrived, he canceled, saying he was too busy.
But we went to his office and asked again for an interview. We were told he was not available. We did meet with the late Chief Leonard Cashane of Kisiku's First Nation. He was a vocal opponent of Dr. Davies' methadone program as a fix for the opiate problem. Although Dr. Davies wouldn't be interviewed, he did meet with Cashane and First Nations health workers.
I asked him the question about, okay, what's the average length of a person to be on methadone? And again, he come back to saying that, that could be for the rest of their life, or it could be 10 years or 4 years. It's up to the person themselves. I asked him that question again, how many people came off of the methadone successful, and he said he had 10, but I don't know where them 10 people are.
APTN Investigates contacted the Saskatchewan College of Physicians and Surgeons for comment as part of our initial investigation. At the time, the oversight body did not disclose whether Dr. Davies had been the subject of complaints or was undergoing investigation from the college. In an emailed statement to Investigates, spokesperson Doug Spitzig said that if a doctor's prescribing practices is brought to the attention of the college, they, quote, only commence an unprofessional conduct investigation if the educational initiatives are ineffective. A year later, in 2014, the college recommended to Health Canada that Dr. Davies' methadone license not be renewed. It wasn't, but still no investigation. That wouldn't happen until March of 2018, almost 5 years after our initial report. The college investigated Davies for 2 separate charges of unbecoming, improper, unprofessional, or discreditable conduct. The charges alleged failing to maintain the standard of the profession concerning his prescribing practices and his record keeping. Davies retired before the college could complete their investigation. At his retirement party, he highlighted the joys of working in a small town like Kamsack. If you live in a big city and work in a big hospital, you're just a number, said Davies. It's not the same as working in a small town where you know everybody you work with. In 2019, the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Saskatchewan concluded their investigation into Davies. Davies did not admit to the charges. Instead, he made a deal. In exchange for the college dropping their investigation, Davies signed an agreement saying that he would agree to, quote, not practice medicine in Saskatchewan or anywhere else in the world. The agreement was signed on July 17, 2019. He'd been retired for 8 months.
Here is what we are always looking for, the 1 in 1,000 chance that somebody with a positive tuberculin test actually has tuberculosis.
But in the 1950s, it's estimated that 1/3 of the Inuit population tested positive for the disease. And letters from more than 800 Inuit patients have been sitting here at the Library and Archives of Canada, untouched for years. Out of the 800 patients we identified in the letters, half of them were known artists. Guy Dargincourt's mother, Leah Idluout, translated the majority of the letters in the collection. She was also treated for tuberculosis at the age of 12 down south. Idluout was a trailblazer, a teacher, journalist, and editor. For Dargincourt, the letters reveal the reach of his mother's work.
It adds another piece to the puzzle. We knew her as a person. We didn't know as an employee or her work or how much of an effect on a lot of people she must have had. I mean, I'll always be proud of her before knowing about this, but this is like, wow.
According to Idluout's boss at the time, Walter Rudnicki, a longtime director of the Arctic Division, putting Inuit on welfare was the last thing the government wanted.
Inuit would get gravitating into towns, into hamlets for work, or because services were available there, and they were becoming dependent, and there was no more serious issue for the heads of Arctic Division and Northern Administration branch than anybody going on welfare.
Tuberculosis patients were top of mind for Rudnicki. He testified at the Kikitani Truth Commission in 2005. carving was built right into recreational programming at tuberculosis hospitals and yielded thousands of dollars. But conditions were less than ideal. This patient letter explains. No wonder the Eskimos don't get better quickly. They carve in the room and the soapstone makes a lot of dust. I am carving for the Hudson's Bay people, the police, and the school teacher. And many patients complained of not being paid. Nurses, doctors, and even RCMP officers could buy from patients directly.
My mom is Annie, and my late dad, is Johnny Arodeno. They carved for a living to provide for the family. That was the only way they provided for the family because there weren't a lot of jobs.
At the height of the tuberculosis epidemic of the 1950s and 1960s, Sarah Aragutinak's family was forced to travel south for treatment. Thousands of kilometers from her home in Belcher Islands, now called Sanikiluaq, Nunavut. She doesn't know much about what happened there.
My mom did, but not a lot, but she told me that they had to wait for a really long time to get home. I know that they were in moose factory for medical treatments, and it was really hard for them, especially not going home for a really long time, because today we go here to Winnipeg and we stay for like 2 days or a week. Worst part, they were not allowed to get out of their hospital bed. They didn't go home for a really long time. They were lied to. It's maddening.
According to these patient letters obtained by APTN Investigates, both of Sarah's grandfathers, Joe and Noah, and her uncle Joe, carved sculptures while they were being treated. But in this letter, her granddad Noah complains of being ripped off. I was also expecting $37 for a piece of art in Hamilton, but I only got half the amount. We brought Sarah for a visit in February 2020. Do you know what kind of stone this is?
I'm not sure.
You don't know?
But I like the ice.
I know, right?
Oh, that's so really cool.
Curator of Inuit art, Darlene Coward-White brought her into the vault.
Wait. Oh my God. Johnny, my dad, Annie, my mom, George, my uncle, from my mother's side, my grandpa Joe. I remember my grandpa Joe used to have so much love towards everyone around him. My grandpa Joe, my grandpa Noah, my mom Annie, my grandpa Joe, I think this is my cousin George.
Stephen Boris is the director and CEO of the Winnipeg Art Gallery. We asked him about the artwork produced by patients at the hospital in February 2020.
I mean, we're completely transparent here, but the challenge is to actually identify that work was produced in the hospital. When you have a collection of 30,000 objects, it could take years and decades to research every single object. But we are committed, because that's part of what we do as a museum, researching the history of each object.
We did some of that research for the art gallery. We found 7 patients who have art in the WAG collection that corresponded to their hospital confinement, and more than 140 artists overall. We shared our findings with director and CEO Stephen Boris in May 2020. A new Inuit art center is set to open. He committed to ensuring these patient letters will be part of the story.
And this story about those Inuit who were in TB hospitals in the South is part of the history of Inuit art. And it's a story that is being told, but could even be told with greater depth and exposure to the Inuit Art Center. And I think those letters would play a critical role in an exhibition, in a program, any initiative we do here that focuses on those decades in those hospitals in the South.
But when the Inuit Art Center, now called Kamsack, opened in the summer of 2021, that was difficult to see. The atrium features an enormous visible vault called Inuit, which means our relatives in Inuktitut. Over 5,000 carvings are on display here, but the artists are not credited by name. Instead, their home communities are attributed.
I felt that it was important to have it organized by community, the communities of origin for the carvings. And there's actually 34 different communities represented in this vault. And it's really interesting, I think, to see the differences in the styles, the stone types, the subject matter from one community to the other. I can't wait for people to come from the north and actually look try to find their relatives and their parents, and because I did mention that there's 3 generations of artists often in these different communities. So for the younger generation to actually come down, be able to easily see the work of their fathers and grandfathers is going to be really awesome.
Without clear attributions to individual artists, it could be more difficult for visitors to find those family links, or for researchers to trace works that may have been produced in tuberculosis hospitals. The letters from Inuit tuberculosis patients were not mentioned during a 1-hour promotional opening video released by the Winnipeg Art Gallery. Nor have they been a part of an exhibit in the new Inuit Art Center. For Sarah, that history is still sinking in.
I can't imagine what they went through. Not just them, every person who was down in Moose Factory.